So I'm starting to work on getting the head for the DRO mounted on the mill here. This is what I got. I forget the model number right off. I'll have to get that, but we'll go into more detail as to the actual capabilities of this DRO once I get it installed and everything working. In fact, I'm going to show all three DROs I have. But this is the back of it, and this is the mounting stud, and this is the bracket that it came with, which quite frankly that bracket just doesn't line up right for anything on here. Not in a position that I would want to have the DRO. Furthermore, there was a flaw in the design here. The way this goes on here, if you see the hole up there, it extends past it quite a bit. Now this is easily fixable, but still it's not right. When you put this on here, it interferes with the bottom of the cabinet here if you have it standing straight up. If you lean it down, or lean it up I should say, so it's mounted with it leaning back like that, it'll clear. But if you want it straight up or even a little forward of straight up, it's going to hit the cabinet, just the way they did that. And the way I want to mount this, I want it, I've got my control here for the overarm, and I want the DRO right in this area here, so that the bottom of it is even with the bottom of the control, and it just goes inboard like that. So it's up high, it's out of the spray region, and but still easily accessible to me, and at a height where I can read it well. You know, and I can swing it too. So what I'm going to do an arm comes off this bolt. This is a lifting, a hole in here is a lifting hole for removing the cover on this because it's quite heavy. Okay, so I'm going to do this cut. I made a little change here with the saw, minor, but I switched my cutting fluid. I was using Band-Aid before, but where the shop gets cold here in the winter, it's unheated unless I'm working in here, because I heat with a wood stove. This is basically my heat source. I've got a blower up top here that runs it through vents in the ceiling and circulates through, which works pretty good. And as auxiliary, I've got a kerosene heater, which when it gets real cold, this gives a little extra heat. And also sometimes if I'm only in here for an hour or something like that, it's just easier just to put the kerosene heater on instead of starting the wood stove, because that takes a while to heat up. But anyways, it gets cold and it can freeze in here, so Band-Aid is not acceptable during the winter because I'll freeze my tanks up. So I've been doing a little research on this, and I've been looking at cutting with oils instead. Right here, clear frying oil, and this is dirt cheap. I get this at Sam's Club. I think I paid $16 for it or something like that for 35 pounds. That's about 4.5 gallons, 5 gallons. And I've tried it out already. I've done a couple of cuts, and I have to say it actually cuts better than the Band-Aid does on the bandsaw anyways. I've yet to try it on the lathe. I've got it installed in the lathe, but I haven't done a cut yet. We'll be doing that when we cut that little piece of rod that's going to go on the top where it pivots. So we'll see how it does there soon. But well, let's start this up. Wait for it to come up. It's a little slower where it's cold. The flow on it, in warmer weather that should speed up, but it's plenty enough to do the job here. I've got the valve all the way open here. With Band-Aid, I had it half closed. Okay. So we're up, and let's release the valve. So it cuts well, and one of the things I noticed right off is it's a lot quieter in the cut. With the Band-Aid, I was still getting a lot of squeaking noises as the blade would cut through, and this is really quiet. You just hear the cutting noises, and that's it. Now I cut that pretty fast, but it's still not a bad cut. The other pieces, I used a little slower drop rate on it. It came out really clean. So this is the last little 2-inch section here. 2 inches as it comes out from the bar, because this is going to be coming straight up here. So let's get this going. So here's all our tubing pieces cut. Now we got to work on the bushing and the piece of pipe, and we'll be ready to. Well, I got to drill a hole through here, around this, and then we're ready to start welding everything up. Okay, so I'm about to start on the 2-inch piece of pipe that's going to go over the bushing assembly, and I've got I'm using that cooking oil for the cutting oil on this now. The first time I'm using that, so we'll see how that does. I don't expect much difference on the pipe because that's pretty easy anyways, but when we do the bushing, I think that's where we're going to see a difference, because that was metal that I actually had some difficulty with doing with the Band-Aid before. And I have a feeling this is going to work better, but we'll see. And I forgot to mention before with the cooking oil, one of the primary advantages of it, besides that it doesn't freeze, is that it is non-toxic, and it doesn't dehydrate your hands like the mineral oils do. The big thing is where it's non-toxic, disposal is a lot easier. Anyways, let's get started here. Okay, so next I'm going to cut this off at 2 inches, and I'm using a carbide insert type parting tool here. This doesn't have to be, down to, hundredths of a millimeter here. I'm just going to gently touch the side there. Now that I'm at the end, and let's see, zero out. get 50.8 for the 2 inches in millimeters, and then the width of this is 3 millimeters, so I gotta go 53.8. Okay, so I'm going to lock my carriage here. I'm at 53 and a couple of hundredths here. And I'm going to use my top slide to fine tune this. So this didn't exactly go as planned here. I lost my fit. Okay, I gotta pause while I put a new bit in there. And now I'm trying to go a little bit lighter to preserve the new bit. Okay, there we go. So this pipe has a welded seam in it, and where they weld it, it's much harder because the heat hardens the metal right there. And I think that's why I snapped. I was going a little too aggressive to begin with, and then it was knocking every time it came around to that weld, and I hit it too hard when it came around to the weld, and it snapped the old one off. That bit was also a little bit dull, which probably wasn't helping matters. Okay, so I don't want to over tighten this because I don't want to put it out around. I also don't want to mar the finish any more than I have to. I could put some shims on there, but it's not that critical. I just don't want to do anything deep. So I'm going to face this off, and then I want to run a boring bar in here, try and get the weld seam cleaned out just so it's flush in there, because we're going to be running a bushing on the inside. I need that nice and clean in there. Right now I'm trying to find where I make full contact all the way around as opposed to just hitting the weld, which I'm just about there. It sounds like it's just starting to scrape all the way around. I may hit it with a second pass after, but I think this will do to start. So yeah, you can really hear the thumping as that hardened weld comes around here. That's probably about all I'm going to be able to get in there for the coolant. sounds like it's through. I'm going to give a couple more passes here at this because it's definitely got spring on it. Let's see if I can show this to you. So I'm definitely getting some bounce in there on the boring bar as it comes around and hits the weld in there. So I don't know how much of this you can actually see, but you should be able to see a coloration there where you've got the weld is right at the bottom there, and you've got a dark spot next to it, and then it goes silver where it's been cut clean. Well, what's happening is it hits the weld and it kind of bounces a little. So I'm going to take this out a little more, hopefully give enough force on it that'll cut all the way around, and see if we can get that out. And here I'm starting on the bushing. The previous part fits over. In editing, I realized that I'm way too fussy on setting the depth for my intermediate cuts. I need to relax and shorten that up. Okay, so I'm about 30 thousandths away right now. So I'm going to do one cut at 20 thou with a fine feed rate, and one at 10 thou with the same fine feed rate. We'll see how that comes out. With this light of a cut, there is really not much to see here, so I'm speeding this part up. That should be pretty close. I'm going to give a spring pass just to clean it up, but I think we're good. Drilling the hole where the mounting bolt goes through and into the top of the machine. These two parts are now finished. I did have to go back and put the shoulder on the bottom before parting off. I had forgotten about that during the video. So I've decided that I really should have a little bit of extra bracing here, or this welds up, because it is a little bit of an extension, and you're going to have the DRO hanging at the end, which has a little bit of weight to it. So I've got another section of this pipe, but I don't want to just do a square block up here. So what I'm going to do here is make a nice taper down like that, and then I'll weld it on here and have the weld go all the way up, so I have the full 2 inches. And this was actually planned from the beginning, because that's why this is 2 inches tall. Well, partly to get the leverage on the post up there, so it's stable enough, but also I was planning on doing some sort of brace here. So here's what I'm going to do, and I've already started this. I'm going to cut this on the bandsaw, and we'll get that in just like that. I'm going to follow that line down that I've scribed on there. So that should do it. Gotta clean it up, but that'll just get welded on the top. I'll lay that out just a sec here. So this is gonna go basically like this, and that little bit out there is, well, I've got it extended past intentionally because this is just a right angle cut from the original cut. So what I did is I laid this up, get that square on the bottom, and I bring the top edge up so it's flush. That gives me the most I can get here as far as back here goes, and we'll clamp this up and we'll tack weld this down, weld it actually, and then it'll come back on the bandsaw, and I'll just recut this right on the edge here and finish up with a little bit of grinding. Make that square all the way up so that this will follow right up. And I gotta grind a little bit around in here. We'll probably just do that with a die grinder by hand to match the curvature of that under there, and we'll have it set in so this comes flush up to the edge on that and weld it on. As my other work was taking up a lot of time, I didn't get to record the final steps, but basically just welding and painting the arm at this point. Here are some photos of the finished product. If you've made it this far, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and found it entertaining or educational. If so, please consider hitting like or subscribe. It does help give me incentive to continue producing more. Thank you.